Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Big Flush. My name is Zachary J. Marintet, and I'm here with my technician, friend, and business partner, John Enot. John, how are you
Well,
doing
I
today?
am doing great, Zach. How you doing today?
I'm well. Lots been going on this week,
Oh
hasn't there?
yeah, it's a wonderful day in the neighborhood. It's a
Yeah.
wonderful day to be alive.
Well, especially if you are Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders.
Ooh,
You
yeah, two
know,
of my
they're
favorite guys. Sleepy Joe Biden,
Sleepy Joe, as your president says.
my president.
Yes, he's not my president because
You're not allowed.
I don't have
Well,
presidents.
that's true. You live in Canada. No,
Yeah.
if you live in America these days, even if you're a Trump supporter,
Hmm.
I voted independent just for the record. But even
Okay.
if you're a Trump supporter, you can't claim him because even if you claim that he's your president, you're automatically like a god awful, demonic, racist human being. So guilt by association, you can't even admit that you like the guy
Right.
if you like the guy.
Well, I don't like the guy at all, personally. I think he's vile. I mean,
Yeah, well, yeah.
but my problem is this, that there's a lot of other vile people who are not being discussed anymore.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely, yeah.
and I think that politics has a lot of secretly like like nauseating people.
Well, I think they're all nauseating. I mean, especially when you get to the national level. I don't care if it's American politics, Canadian
Hmm.
politics, German politics. I don't think it matters where you are in the world. When you get to a certain level in politics at the national level,
Yes.
then it's just the whole culture is that way because it's across the board. Doesn't matter what country it is, it's pay to play.
Hmm.
Big corporate interests and big, entities, whether it be other governments or big business,
Hmm.
they lobby or bribe the politicians, and then the politicians do what they want, and the people can yell and scream all they want, but since the people have no heart anymore and they won't actually surround their Capitol buildings with pitchforks and bombs and all kinds of crazy stuff like that, then people aren't going to get changed because they're certainly not doing it at the voting booth.
Right. Well, I think one needs a strong understanding of Machiavelli, have a flip through the prints and understand that power corrupts everybody. Because even Hillary and Billary, they started out as great people who, like the main focus in their lives were to help people.
Allegedly.
I believe no, I believe they
You
started that
do?
way. Yeah, I believe they started that way. But I think that as the money started to come in, they changed. It changed their hearts. It corrupted them. And there's nobody in the world who's incorruptible because, especially when it comes to money and power.
Yeah.
And that's what the gist of what the Prince is about and Machiavelli's
Mm-hmm.
school of thought was.
Yeah.
Um, I'm worried. I have the same anxiety with regard to AOC, Alexandra Ocasio
Oh boy,
Cortez.
those three letters.
You know, she seems like a lovely girl, but when you pay attention to the fact that she's never really on a hostile um, uh, platform. Like she's never been on Fox News. She's never done
Yeah.
interviews with people who will not like her, which is difficult to find outside of Fox News.
Yeah, but I mean, she couldn't. I mean, the thing is with all those news programs, whether you're right or left, I mean, the news programs pretty much are basically designed to destroy you from the minute you come on. I mean, I remember the Bill O'Reilly show was like that. Hannity's
Yeah, he
like
was
that.
he was the first Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you recall, John? I think we spoke about this before, the Jeremy Glick encounter.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember
That
that.
was quite a game
Yeah.
changer for the
Mhm.
way or Fox was perceived.
Yeah.
And one interesting thing for me is to compare the way the media act now, like the CNN, MSNBC, but mostly I would focus on CNN because of the MAGA hat boys,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
the Jussie Smollett investigation, various other things where their reporting was a little bit too abrupt,
Oh yeah.
considering
Yeah.
how little information,
Yeah.
what little information they'd had at
Yeah.
that time.
Well, you know what? Part of
They
that is
ran with it
part of
anyway.
that is willful because the thing is when you already have a preset agenda that you want to push or a preset narrative, then when you see a story unfolding, it's almost like you just want to see enough of the tip of the iceberg to run with to push your narrative and your story.
Right.
You don't really want to stand around and get the facts and get all that because every little bit of facts that you get in might like knock down your story or your narrative. Maybe you start seeing that it's not exactly as bad as you first were going to report, like what happened in the MAGA hat case. But that's because of the free feeding frenzy, news media we have now.
Right.
And it's one thing to have to chase a story, and it's one thing to have a deadline and be sensational for your ratings, because then you can sell better ad space. But
which is what it's all about for these people at the end of the day. It's not about true and honest reporting, that, as in the days of Cronkite.
No, definitely not. But it's even more sinister now, because I could totally understand if what was driving, what they did was just money. Like, it's because then any sensational story, I mean, it's the reason why local news usually runs with murders and break-ins and deadly car accidents at the top of the news hour, because that's what grasps people attention. That's what sells. They make money. So from that standpoint, from a business standpoint, I understand what they're doing. But nowadays, it's from a political standpoint. The news is not supposed to like tell a person how they are supposed to think or how they're supposed to feel about something, or be like a moral guide for people. The news is supposed to tell you the facts of what's going on. Though it's going to storm tomorrow. Oh, there was a car accident, 2 people died. But you don't try and lead and goad people, and you don't manufacture stories. You don't bring people into your newscast that only have a certain set of, opinions that you do.
Right.
And then bring in some poor schlep, who has an opposing opinion, but you've already researched as maybe a very weak arguer or isn't very good at, dictating what they feel. And you put that one person up against 4 other people, and then you put them in the multi-window scene that we've all seen on the news, like constantly in 24-hour news cycles, and you're directing the narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a very dangerous thing. It's very dangerous.
Well, what I was going to say with regard to the Bill O'Reilly factor, or just the O'Reilly factor, I think it was called, in the Jeremy Glick interview that he did, that, made everybody realize what Fox News was all about.
Yeah.
They didn't take that feedback and look at it like, oh, we need to not ever do that again. We have to be less hostile to our guests because it doesn't make us appealing to voters, say, because we're talking about a political context. Being liked means more than just me being liked. I have my party that I want to support.
Sure.
Even though Bill O'Reilly's officially a independent, but that's a bit of a but quite silly to think that. But he doubled down after that, and that's what you see a lot of the time on the left these days. There's a debate with between Jordan Peterson. I mean, what a team! Jordan Peterson and Stephen Fry on one side, and then Michael Eric Dyson on the other. Who I like him as a person. I'm sure that interpersonally he would be a person who I would like. But his postmodern philosophy, and he's also some kind of a reverend or pastor. In addition to being a brilliant writer, there are things that he's written about that I really like.
He's a little radical for me.
But he is a little radical. And when you combine the postmodernism with the preachy factor, you see how easily that marriage happens.
Yeah.
The left also has its religious element.
Yeah.
And a religion can really be anything sometimes.
Sure.
All it means is what you believe in is intangible or faith-based or faith-based.
Yeah, yeah.
So you could say that about, I wouldn't say that about the environmental cause. I do think that our industries put stress in an unnatural way on our environment, but I also know my history, and I think it was the 11th century, they had the MWP, the medieval warm period, which changed everything in cultural life in Europe, because peasants and serfs, their crop yields were just a little bit higher than they normally would have been, but it increased the quality of life for everybody by having that just a couple degrees warmer. And that lasted about a century. And that century is also considered the golden age of the medieval period.
Yeah.
And my point, the reason I'm bringing that up, because there are points in human history where the temperature increases. So there's an argument to be had from the other side as well.
Yeah.
That argument doesn't really happen efficiently in our media because there, again, I'll finish my point about what that argument would be. There is an extent to which people who are environmentalists and, like AOC,
Mm-hmm.
where they're going to need people's money. There's going to be tax,
Yeah.
whether it's the carbon tax issue or, just charging people more money for
Mm-hmm.
for gas, which I guess, would be taxes. But there's also campaigns that these people have and fundraising for research. And I'm worried that when the money is on the table in the meeting room,
Mm-hmm.
that you'll have a situation where people are going to look at each other and figure out how they can get that money in their pockets.
Oh, of course.
I was just in December, I think I also told this to you, was working in Slovakia, where I used to live
Mm-hmm.
for a couple of years and have many good friends there. I worked for PR for an independent film. I can't say the name of it because I have signed a
Oh, okay.
NDA,
Mm-hmm.
but more on that later. I met with the producers there, and they had to meet with people in the government to get government funding for this culturally important European film.
Okay.
But a lot of those people who are older that used to be in the communist government prior to 1990,
Mm-hmm.
they're capitalists now,
Oh.
but they're secret closet case communists
Mhm.
who still have this attitude of when there's money on the table, they don't want to help society.
Yeah.
And they never did for 40 years.
Yeah.
They take their number one plan is to find a sneaky way to justify getting that money in their pocket.
Yeah.
And that's why, even with the Marx issue,
Mhm.
the ideology that founded communism, that is the foundation of communism, there's a lot of good things within that, just like there's a lot of good things within what AOC says. But so much of it is easily corruptible because it's intangible. It's something that's going to happen in the future.
Well, yeah.
Just like the book of Revelations, Jesus is going to come back
Well,
and
yeah.
everything's going to be great.
No, that's the problem with this. It's nothing that you can prove. I mean, was a decade ago, Al Gore with his environmental movement, basically was saying that the world's about to end and it's a crisis, and here we still are. I mean, there's religious factions that do the same thing with their members. I mean, they talk about the world's going to end on this specific day, and then when it didn't, it's because, God had a change of heart and told them about it, and
Right.
so, but it totally, when there's money involved, I mean, it corrupts everybody. I mean, and you can see that in the United States government too, in other areas like, federal agencies. You have all kinds of people trying to get grants from the U.S. government for researching things like ketchup and earthworms and peanut butter and, the way that, this tree frog jumps on this bush and why. And I mean, it's not like it's not important to study science and things, but, there's like a whole closet, like industry infrastructure that's funded this way. So, if you know the system and you have somebody with credentials, like you're a professor or a scientist or something, you can literally, agency shop and you can get money forever. And, you find a way to get in on a movement like, the green movement. Well, I study, environmental, air quality, or I study, how the oceans and the coral reefs are being affected by plastic pollution. And, this is my thesis. So my grant needs to be $30 million for 5 years. And, I'll study this and come back with my findings. And then once they have the money, they have the money.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that they're doing legitimate work, and it doesn't mean that their findings are ever conclusive. So, I don't know why that we continue to fund stuff like that. And as long as money is in the equation, especially big government money, and it's a handout, then it's
Right.
always going to be corrupt.
And with anything like this, it's not just the money that corrupts, but I also find there's a problem with people, and I mean, I don't have a problem with people who are employed doing cancer research, but there is an anxiety for me that, say there was an absolute cure found for cancer, all kinds of cancer tomorrow, which
Mhm.
you've also mentioned to me
Yeah.
off camera before. You think they've already got
Oh,
that?
yeah, I think they do.
I don't want to get into the conspiracy theory
Sh-
yet,
okay.
because
Not yet.
I mean, that deserves its own podcast
Yeah,
in and
for
of
sure.
itself, right?
Yeah.
Um, but with the cancer research thing, if it was invented or discovered tomorrow, what are all those? What's that entire job sector going to do?
Well,
It's like when the
yeah.
light bulb was invented. What are the
Sure.
Chandlers and the oil lamp people going to do now?
No, it's a big thing, and I mean it's the same thing. You look at the military-industrial complex. I mean, we've turned, at least the United States has turned into a war-based or a military-based economy. People when they think of the military, they think of army soldiers and admirals and battleships and airplanes and stuff. But what they don't realize is there's an entire infrastructure behind the military.
Hmm.
I mean, the military is one of the biggest, purchasers of goods in the United States. It's almost like its own economy. I mean,
Right.
if, up where I live in the Detroit area here, and I know where you're at in Windsor, I mean, it's not something we see. We don't see military bases on every corner. We don't see government buildings. I mean, the only government buildings we have in the area are the ones, are federal buildings downtown Detroit. And then there is, we have a National Guard base, and we have a tank plant that makes military tanks and gear in Warren, Michigan.
Right.
But if you go down to parts of the country like Austin, Texas, and Houston, and Dallas, and, down south and other places, there's big, tall skyscraper buildings that are nothing but military people. I mean, I would reckon to guess that there's probably 100,000 people employed, 200,000, 300,000 people employed by the military. It's a
Mhm.
huge number.
Right.
And there's
And it's all from taxpayers.
all taxpayer funded. I mean, so, what happens if all those people lose their jobs? It's huge. I mean, it's same thing with
Right.
green energy. What if all the, they come up with the self-driving cars and all that? Well, what are all the truck drivers going to do? And that's what the one gentleman that's running for president right now, I believe his name is Andrew Yang.
Okay.
He's a Democrat, and he actually has spent a lot of time in the Detroit area doing business development and charity work for small businesses. He's a very passionate guy, and I actually kind of like some of the things that he's had to say. But one of his big things is if his platforms are running for president, is that he feels like we need to have a universal basic income of somewhere around $1,000 a month for every citizen. And the reason why is because over the next 3 to 5 years, I mean, it's a very quick timetable, and his opinion and his research is that so many industries are going to be disrupted from technology, that so many people are going to be unemployed so quickly
Right.
that there isn't going to be enough work to backfill, and people are going to need the supplemental income, or society's going to implode. So, you can't just, get rid of an industry. So there's a lot of corruption in that, it's Detroit's a big union town. For years, what do unions do? The unions kind of bribe and do this and that to make sure that, the union workers are protected. So what do? They give money to, political campaigns, usually on the Democrat side from unions. And then the Democrats, what do? They always make sure when they pass like healthcare reform or labor laws or transportation laws that they're always friendly to union workers and union needs. And then people that might be in the exact same industry but aren't union, they don't get the same protection. So those will be the people that get picked on or fined or harmed, where the union guys always stay like pretty, pretty in a pretty sweet spot. So,
Mhm.
the whole thing, breeds a lot of corruption.
Right. And it goes back to this issue of people being activists also,
Mm-hmm.
not only for environmentalism, but for other things like sexism, which
Mm.
exists,
Mhm.
racism, which exists, and we saw it at the uh, conflict in it was Charlottesville, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Where the Robert E. Lee statue was torn down. Girl died
Oh, yeah.
because these fascists or skinheads, neo-Nazis, whatever there are nuances between the terms. I shouldn't just shrug my shoulder. Like
Yeah.
there's a difference between a white supremacist and a white separatist.
Sure.
There's a difference between a skinhead and a neo-Nazi.
Yeah, and
And
some
it's,
of them are probably funded by the CIA or FBI to go in and be instigators to
You think
start
that?
Oh, I absolutely do.
But I think there are a lot of racist people. It's not something that I would think.
Are there though? I mean, I take issue with
I've been
that.
to the South. I've been to Mississippi and Alabama and seen white people just casually using the N word without.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with or without black people there, it's always awful. But they just use that word.
Yeah.
And
No, I
they're-
agree with you
and
there.
they-
I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it in my life. I have friends of all different ethnic backgrounds. I've witnessed it firsthand with friends. I've witnessed it firsthand by myself when you're with certain people. So
Mhm.
I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist, because absolutely it does. Everybody has some type of prejudice, or I say racism, but some type of thoughts that aren't necessarily congruent with somebody else's culture, the
Right.
things they believe in. But you know, racism can be really, really, misstrued, I think, because what makes somebody truly racist?
Well, for me, racist as a person, I can't say that until a person proclaims it. So if you've ever read, like I had to read when I was in high school living in Europe, and I'm sure many teenagers around the world do, we have to read about Hitler
Mhm.
and the Nazis and their
Mhm.
ideology. And if anybody's ever read Mein Kampf, the Hitler's sort of manifesto, he clearly says, "I am an anti-Semite."
Yeah, yeah. Well,
And most of those people are self-proclaimed
Sure,
racists. Like
sure.
they don't care, what anybody says. So it gets to a point where, going back in history, when witches were burned, say at Salem, but they
Yeah.
were also burned all over Europe and in various historical contexts. It was other people pointing the finger at these women and calling them witches and inventing reasons
Mhm.
to say that. And it doesn't
Sure.
matter what the person said. They're like, "No, I'm not a witch. I'm not a witch." Ah, that's exactly what a witch would say.
Yeah, yeah.
So
But I guess my point is with that is, you could be, you could be from a different era. You could be an older person from the South, let's say, that has certain preconceived stereotypes that, have been ingrained in their DNA since they were born and passed down. And you can look on a group of people and say bad things about them, or run your mouth, or make jokes or whatever. But if you were, going about your personal day and you saw somebody like get in a car accident, or get hit by a car in front of you, or attacked by a dog, or some type of bad thing happen, are you really not going to run out and help that person? Or if you run up to help them and you see that they're of an ethnicity that you don't necessarily care for, are you really going to just like, oh, that's an Asian person, I don't like Asian people, I'm just
not
going to
me, but I think there are people who are like that.
Yeah, but I think the number that will actually either act and harm somebody or not act to help somebody, I think people talk a lot of shit. I think people, can bitch all day long about their racial issues or their prejudices, but if they're right in front of somebody, or somebody's in some type of trauma, I think most people would do the right thing, even if, they talk a lot of smack. So I think in terms of people that are actually willing to act out violent, harmful, destructive things to other people purposely, I
Okay.
think that number is extremely small. And because the media would have you believe that we are such a divided nation in the States, that it's just racism's everywhere. It's never been so rampant. And you know what? Me and my friends of
Yeah.
all different ethnicities sit around and look at each other like, what the hell are they talking about? Like,
Mhm.
where is this place they're talking about? It's certainly not in the Detroit area where I live.
Right.
And, I'm not in Windsor all the time, so I don't know how it is for you in Canada. But we look at each other like, these fools are crazy,
Right. Well, here in Canada, it's way different. So, you've met relatives of mine who
Yeah,
are
mhm.
light-skinned African Americans,
Sure.
not far removed.
Mm-hmm.
My dad's father is a light-skinned African American man,
Mm-hmm.
and when I'm in the States and I'm with him, with Uncle Larry, and people,
Oh, mm-hmm.
he introduces me as his nephew, and I say, "Hey, Uncle Larry." I always call him that.
Sure.
And people in the States, I find they're more likely to make a joke or bring that up,
Yeah.
the race thing. Oh, you really his nephew? Come on, you're pulling my leg.
Right.
But
Right. Yeah.
in Canada, I feel like people would pause for a moment
Mm-hmm.
and try and imagine 2 or 3 scenarios where that
Mm-hmm.
would be the case.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just out of politeness or not wanting to be embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the latter more. People wouldn't ask or bring it up.
Yeah. Well, and I found that like when I've been in Europe too, you go to someplace like Paris. I mean, there's multicultural people. I mean, you see more interracial, whatever, relationships walking down the street hand in hand than you do like
Oh, yeah.
regular things. And I mean, it's the same thing in other parts of the country. I mean, when I lived in San Francisco, I used to tell people back home that would give me shit about, the area. I'd be like, hey, this place is like a melting pot where they took every nationality of people and put them in a big fishbowl and shook it up and dumped it out. And people out here, they don't necessarily see or experience those kind of things like they do in other parts of the country. So,
Mhm.
but going back to my point, the thing is yeah, they might people. That's one thing about the States is that people kind of, because of the history of the nation, they might take a double take, or they might say, oh, come on, yeah, all right, you're really his uncle. He's black as tar and you're white. How can you
Yeah.
be his uncle? But at the same token, if either you or him are in the street and some guy comes up and tries to take his wallet or hits him over the head, I mean, people are going to act to help, even if they paused before and was like, oh, that doesn't make sense. He's a black guy, you're a white guy. They're not the people that are actually evil that will actually act on their racism and do foul things. I think is very small compared to the way they portray it on television.
Right. I think the argument against that people would direct at you for saying that is that the new racism is more of a passive kind of racism. And I'll give you an example: the voter ID situation. There's a really good video online on this. Somebody was debating Black Lives Matter, and they ultimately proved that it's kind of more racist to assume that black people don't have IDs.
Well, yeah, and the one new internet sensation, I forget her name, real well-spoken African American woman.
I know, yeah, I forget her name. I got to look her up.
Oh God, it's gonna kill me now. But she is so like articulate when she talks about this, because it's true. I have a really dear friend, and she's African American, and she was really passionate about the fact that they're trying to suppress voter registration. They don't want black people to vote and this and that, and they're there's all these voter suppression laws and stuff. And I looked at her one time like,
Candace Owens.
Candace Owens,
She's
that's
so
her.
articulate.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Don't fuck with Candace.
Don't fuck with Candace. You better know
Yeah.
your shit. And she was like, no. And I'm like, so what is this you're talking about? Because I was kind of like concerned. Like, this is my very close friend. And if she is feeling some type of racism, or if she thinks something isn't right, this girl's educated, one of the best universities of the country. When she says or takes something to heart, I take it seriously because I love that girl to death. And she was just like, they're making people get IDs or show IDs when they go to vote. And I looked at her like really puzzled, like, okay, like I've had an ID since I was like 15. I have my voter registration card that I got in the mail. I keep it in my wallet most of the time. I have my social security card. Well, what are you talking about? Well, it's hard in certain areas. Black people, they don't have the same access to get a driver's license.
They don't know how to use the internet was another thing that they were
Yeah.
trying to push.
Yeah, and again, it's like, okay, I understand that there's impoverished areas where people don't have opportunities, but you mean to tell me that somebody can't walk? And this is, I think, the argument I tried to make to her at the time was, you mean to tell me that, okay, you don't have a car, or you never learned to drive, or you did something bad, your driver's license was taken away.
Mhm.
You mean to tell me that you can't walk into like a Secretary of State office or Department of Motor Vehicles office and get a official state ID? Oh,
Right.
well, no, you can't because, they can't always, have the means to get their birth certificate, or they don't know how to get it, or, they have to work so much that they can't leave work, to go down to the Department of Motor Vehicles during business hours. So, and I'm thinking, well, I work full time too. And when I need to renew my driver's license, I have to like bust out of work, drive there like a bat out of hell, wait in line with a nervous stomach that I'm going to be late and not make my next meeting, and I got to stand there for like everybody else. And I take care of my license tabs or I renew my license. And I mean, when I was younger, I had my driver's license suspended because I had a lead foot when I was a kid. Because my
Okay.
dear grandmother bought me a Mustang when I was just out of high school. So although that was a sweet thing to do, it probably wasn't the smartest thing to do for my responsibility
Your
level.
Nona spoiled you?
And then, yeah, she did a little
Sounds
bit.
like I don't know many people whose grandma.
Well,
gave
I
them a
know, right?
Mustang.
My God love her, God rest her soul.
Uh,
But anyway, in a short time, I got too many points from speeding tickets, and I lost my license. So I still needed an ID to survive. I mean,
mhm.
at the time we wrote checks. If you tried to get into a bar or some type of adult like R-rated movie, you had to show ID. You always had to have ID.
Yeah.
So the
Bus
fact that
pass.
so the fact that somebody is in such a state that they don't have the wherewithal to even get a state ID, and there's just no possible way they could pull something like that off. I don't know. I just call BS, man. And I think Candace Owens is right when she says that is the most insulting, racist way to portray my people, that we're so dumb and ignorant that we can't even get a state ID no
Yeah.
matter what.
I hope I'm not. I don't know if I'm quoting Andrew Breitbart or whoever it was.
Oh,
but,
Lord.
well, I don't know if I like everything
Attention,
he said.
people on the left, attention.
Yeah.
Andrew Breitbart reference about
Yeah.
to surface.
He who must not be named.
Yes.
He did say one interesting thing about the soft bigotry of low expectations,
Mm-hmm.
which is a sort of new racism. We were actually talking about a different kind of new racism, which the left accuses. I'm not even going to say they accuse the right of it, because they accuse a lot of their own people
Yeah.
of being racist, even though there's no proclamation on behalf of the person being accused that they are.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing that happened to Roseanne Barr,
Mm-hmm.
who, I forget
Yeah.
the politician she was talking about, but she said he looked like a monkey. Not wise.
Oh,
Not wise.
It was a lady. It was a lady, and was it Valerie Jarrett?
Could have been.
I forget who it was, but yeah, she said, made a reference to a Democratic lady
Who's
and-
African American.
who's African American, but I guess her complexion is very pale. And Roseanne, at least she claims, which I kind of believe her from, the things that I saw after the fact, claimed that she had no idea. It was just a reference. And that's a scary thing. I mean, you can't even make a reference anymore. God forbid,
Right.
you just quick-witted off the top of your head. You pick a certain animal or a bug or a certain term or whatever.
And their ears perk up.
Yeah, their
not
ears perk
hair.
up like, oh my God, you said a buzzword. So it doesn't matter about the whole history of your life. It doesn't matter about
Right.
how you've lived, any type of charity work you've done, how you came up.
Doesn't matter that all human beings are monkeys. We are great apes.
Yes,
And
exactly.
all people of all races. I've said that about people of all races.
Mm-hmm. So
You know,
now you
Mostly white people.
you
by the way.
lose all of your life's history of anything good you've ever done, and because you uttered that word it doesn't matter if it's a harmless reference or not,
Mhm.
you're a Satan, racist, devil person, and you're banished to hell. You have to lose your job. You have to lose all your friends. You have to be put on display and chastised on the internet to millions of people. And if they had it their way, they probably put even your picture on the side of buses and billboards and say, this is enemy number one, because they said, somebody, had a neck like a giraffe.
Right.
And they were insensitive to that person because they came from a place where giraffes live.
Right. But I think that a lot of it is reactionary to Trump himself, especially this. I'm mainly talking about the stuff that's been going on since 2016. people are aggressive and intolerant, but Trump can also be quite aggressive and intolerant of other people's views.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see him as a person who debates. I remember when he was during the Republican primary, they all asked, one of the questions was, will you happily serve if you lose?
Mm-hmm.
Will you happily serve, whoever wins? Everybody but Trump said yes. He said, no, I either win, it's my way or the highway, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that the left is reacting to that in a big way.
Well,
Because
yeah.
remember, Bill Maher called Trump an orangutan
Yeah, he did.
after the birth certificate fiasco.
Yeah.
So Bill Maher basically said, now that we've proved that our president is an American,
I don't think we ever proved that.
well, America thinks they did. He
Some people in America.
represented something, and
Yeah.
well, I'd say most.
Not that
I'd
that's,
say most
not
people.
that that's the worst thing that's ever
go
happened
along
in
with-
American politics, but I mean,
Yeah. But the whole point is Bill Maher said now Trump has to produce his birth certificate proving that he's not the offspring of two orange orangutans.
yeah.
And Trump backlash, he lashed back.
Mhm.
Lash back.
Lashback.
I don't know. I think they're both
I think they're
Admissible.
both legal ways to use the terminology.
For now.
Yes.
but he sued him, and he's also
Mhm.
got a thin skin, Trump.
Oh yeah, I mean he's your typical like New York City, bully. He's totally a bully, and as long as he's on the like powerful end of the bullying, I mean he's all happy and prominent. But even before Trump was ever in politics, he had a long history, and it's one of the things he was popular for. Is somebody crossed him, and he would sue the hell out of him.
Mhm.
He'd talk about it in the books he wrote during the 80s and 90s. I mean, it was part of his mantra that, his business philosophy is that if somebody comes across you and crosses them, then you bury them, you sue the hell out of them, and, you destroy your competition and the enemy. So,
Right.
I mean, that's just big businessman New York mentality.
Yeah.
But, yeah, people are upset. They're upset that he won. I mean, some people still can't come to terms with the fact that, that he won. They'll say things like, well, he didn't win the popular vote. And I'm like, well, that's not how it works here. It doesn't matter if you win the popular vote.
It's never been
No,
that way.
no, never. And I mean, we have the Electoral College for a reason, which, whether we have Trump or not, I still completely believe in, because we didn't have the Electoral College system in the States, then a very, very, liberal place like California, which has, a shit ton more people than other places, or, a very conservative place like Texas that has a shit ton more of other people,
I
could
agree.
easily, people who live in Montana would never have a chance. People who live in Iowa or Nebraska would never have a chance. So our whole political culture would rest upon what these two centers do. And to a certain extent, it's that way now. Because when you see the maps from the past elections, like the last Trump election, I mean, the whole country, like district by district, is 100% red, except for, the 4 or 5 big, cities like New York, California, Los Angeles, San Francisco. So how can...
Chicago's pretty liberal.
Yeah, and Chicago
Philly?
too. Yep, Philly too. So how can the whole country be red, but yet the election still be close? The electoral college is a brilliant thing to keep people from doing dumbass things as generations go, and I'm all for it. And every once in a while, it's going to deliver somebody that you don't like, because that's the nature of politics.
Mhm.
If the Democrats hadn't been so out of touch with mainstream America, Trump would have never gotten elected. If they didn't play games inside their own party by, running a bus over the Bernie Sanders campaign, who I didn't necessarily want to be president. But, in fairness, on the Republican side, the election before that, the Republicans did the same thing to Ron Paul. Ron Paul came out and was extremely popular.
Mhm.
He won the Iowa caucus, and the news media totally discounted and didn't even give him any press. And next thing you know, oh, he's a crazy and, libertarian, and we can't have that. And the Republicans basically did the same thing to Ron Paul. So,
Right.
Both sides are fucked up.
Right. And they're doing it, I find, to Bernie again, but Bernie's also burying himself. He dissed Joe Biden
I know.
either yesterday or the day
Poor
before.
Bernie.
But the other thing is that I wanted to bring up about the Democrats is the lack of freedom of speech, the
Mhm.
lack of, this trend of not prioritizing that as a value.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And I think that's the reason why there's been so much stagnation in the development of their ideas since 2016.
Yeah.
So they're saying the same things, they're hiring the same people. They don't have anybody exciting. And I mean, for all the bad things I think about Trump, he's exciting. He gets people's attention. There's a certain energy, positive, negative,
Oh yeah.
up for the individual to decide. But he's more exciting, just like Barack Obama.
Yeah.
He was exciting to people. Nobody. It was a novelty.
Mhm.
So the Democrats need a new Obama. They don't need another Obama. They need a new phenomenon that is novel, a new candidate with something fresh, like really fresh.
Yeah.
And that takes creativity.
Oh, sure. And I honestly, I don't see that happening for the next election. I mean, they're already kind of doing the same thing again. I mean, Bernie has gotten a lot of heat. Bernie has been, getting things from inside his own party, and then he's getting crap from, his own gaffes he makes on the road, because he hasn't learned anything either. And then they're also kind of vilifying Joe Biden, who, for all intents and purposes, could be their best front runner and definitely has the most name recognition, and probably most Americans generally that aren't like left or right but are in the middle probably think he's the most harmless choice there is, like the safest choice. So Joe Biden probably is the best horse in the race for the Democrats at this particular time.
Right.
And they're trying to sabotage him. At least a certain faction of the Democratic Party is trying to sabotage him. Because,
for the sake of Bernie, or
no, because they don't see him as like progressive or liberal enough. They really don't. I mean, some people think that, he's like an enemy of the Me Too movement because he's a groper. They say he gropes little girls, he gropes women, he's a groper, he's a pervert. I'm like, I'm not a fan of Joe Biden, but Joe Biden's not a groper. Knock this shit off. And then now they're trying to pin this scandal on him about the things he was doing in the Ukraine, back during the Obama administration. And I mean, the left-leaning media in the States are the ones that are going after him. And they're not going after him because all of a sudden they have a moral compass and they want to, tell the news, legitimately and straightforward. They're going to sabotage him because there's a whole faction underlying movement that if it's not radical progressive, that it's got to be destroyed at all costs. He's got too many ties to lobbyists. He's too big to corporates. And Joe Biden isn't going to go out and do the bidding of the AOCs and the, Rashida Tlaibs and people like that. He's just not that guy. And that drives him crazy. And I think even if Joe Biden won, not that he would get as much criticism from the left as as Trump has got, but there would still be a lot of people that wouldn't be happy with him winning either, even though he's a Democrat. So there's so much splintering on that side of the aisle that I don't see how they can possibly play nice together long enough to get a presidential candidate elected.
Right. But it's also, I find, a problem with the freedom of speech, the freedom of articulation. And you notice that if you saw the View interview, like when he was on the View, Sleepy Joe, he couldn't finish a thought. He was so nervous about what he had to say because, I'm on a woman's show.
Sure.
Whatever they say about me, I'm going to kind of agree with. The gist of what he's saying is, well, I come from a different generation and we're not as conscious or aware, but that's something I need to work on. It's like a self-deprecating form of sycophancy for not an individual, but an ideology. It's just ass-kissing par excellence.
Yeah, but when you go on that show, that's exactly what you have to do because
Not
You would have to,
Omarosa.
well, no, I know, God love her. I had barbecue ribs with her one night over.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
You
a funny
mentioned that.
story, but we don't want to talk about that. I want people to think I'm like a far-leaning zealot. But when you go into that show, ahead of time, unless you're an idiot or you're on their side, that the whole reason they're having you on the show is not to actually have a real conversation with you. They're having you on the show so they can freaking shoot you full of holes and barbecue your ass for ratings and for being against their political ideology. It's a character assassination show. So why
Yeah.
people
I like
still
that term.
feel, even on the left side, I mean, they're all left leaning except for the one poor conservative girl they have on there. But why,
Megan.
yeah, Megan, why you would even for a second, whether you're left or right or whoever, why you would go on that show and risk your reputation when you know what they're all about? You got to be a fool. You
Or
don't.
just a really good debater.
Yeah.
I don't know what a great debater she was, but Judge Janine Pirro,
Mm-hmm.
I don't particularly like her. Her voice is obnoxious, but it was interesting to see her on The View go head toe to toe with Whoopi. And
Okay.
it's, again, I like it for the same reason that I think some people who are liberal like Trump, because they just want the thrill of seeing that monkey wrench go into the turbine
Yeah.
and what'll happen.
Yeah.
I think that, speaking of Trump and excitement, that's what I think a lot of people are into,
Mm-hmm.
and why I have a theory of why the left hasn't tapped into that, and it goes back to this speech thing with Joe Biden. He's too afraid. They're all too afraid to propose a new idea
Yeah.
because they never know how they're going to spin it and make them look like a racist or a homophobe.
Well, yeah.
So now what you have is a situation where if we were to play current, pre-midterm election dialogue, debate,
Mm-hmm.
people talking that were also involved in the 2016 election,
Mm-hmm.
there's no difference in what they're saying, and it didn't work before. So
absolutely.
why would they think that it's going to work now?
Because they can't admit that they were. Oh, I don't even want to say I can't admit it, because it's not a matter of like owning up to the fact that you're wrong or that you're on the wrong side of ideas and issues and ideology than mainstream people. Because what people always fail to realize is that, if you're far left or far right or close to it, guess what? There's a whole shit ton of people in the middle. The majority of people are in the middle, and they're neither one of those ideologies, at least not bought and sold and paid for into either one of them. So they're common sense people. And you can be a lifelong Democrat or Republican or in the middle, a complete independent. But as a whole, most people, are tired of all the BS and crap they see. They see that nothing ever gets done. They see when politicians make speeches that they're just using canned terms and, political speak, and that they're just talking to get your vote. They know the minute they get elected, they're going to go back and do the same thing again. So this has been going on now, God, most of my whole adult life. So people, I think, are finally to the point where they're so fed up with it that, these people come along now and they want to radically change everything. People don't go along with that ideology or mindset. But it was interesting, and I forget what program I was watching, but there was a poll that was done. And what the poll said was that it's like how these people on either side communicate with the rest of the world. And it was really mind-blowing that if you're far left, you really only communicate, like 95% of people that are in that mindset and ideology only communicate inside that bubble of the same-minded people.
Yeah, it's an echo chamber.
It's an echo chamber where people on the other side, they listen to ideas, they're more receptive
You mean in the
to it.
center?
In the center and to the right.
But there are right-wing people who only live in a echo
right,
chamber
to the
too.
far right, you're right. But collectively, if you take the far left and say the moderate left, as opposed to the far right and the moderate right, the moderates on the either sides, the moderates on the left side are in an echo chamber, and the ones on the right are not. and that
Okay.
so they still can't believe. It's like, and I saw this when I lived in San Francisco, because San Francisco is probably the most liberal place in the country. And it's not that the people want to be hardcore left, or they want to be bratty or me about my ideology. It's just that they've come up in a way where it doesn't make sense to their mindset that somebody doesn't feel the exact same way they are. Because
Right.
if you live in San Francisco, it is an echo chamber.
Okay.
There is very few people that you'll come across in your daily life that don't think that way.
Yeah.
So then when you leave there, like I had a friend that came and visited me in Detroit a couple summers ago, guy I know very well. And it's first time in Detroit ever. He came to Detroit, and walking around, he just could not believe, like he was having culture shock.
Mhm.
What do you mean people act like this? What do you mean people believe this? What do you mean that there's wiggle room for this topic? How can they say two things, one out of either side of their mouth? How can there be like common ground on this issue? This issue's black or white. And he was almost having a mini meltdown because he's lived in San Francisco his whole life,
Mhm.
and it's the first time he's really ever traveled anywhere out of the state of California.
Yeah.
And he wasn't being an asshole, and he was literally having culture shock. And I think that's what people that are in the middle, and what they see, that these people are so far out of touch, but the people that are far out of touch can't see it. So they're not going to do anything different for the next
Yeah.
election. They don't think they're wrong. They don't think anything that happened was wrong. The only thing they think that happened was wrong was that the Russians somehow hacked every election box in the country, and that Hillary's reputation was tarnished because of underhanded politics. So it wasn't fair, and that's why she lost.
Right.
They have no concept of what the reality of the situation was.
And a lot of talk about we just need to get rid of the electoral college.
Yeah.
There's also, even to leave America for a moment, in the
Mhm.
UK, there's even talk about cutting off the age for voting to like maximum 70. After you turn your 70th birthday, you can't vote anymore.
Oh, well.
There's a lot of people who want to put that on the table in earnest.
Yeah, what the hell?
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
So we'll see where this midterm election goes. I don't necessarily want 4 more years of Trump for
Yeah.
you guys, because that's not my country. So
Yeah.
I have to always remind people of that. But it affects us all.
Yeah, I do, but I think it's more psychological than anything, because, I mean, if you get real, I mean, people get so spun up on things that they don't have any first-hand knowledge about or don't have their hands in. When you wake up every day and you go on with your day, you go to work, you get your kids off to school, after school you take them to soccer practice, when you take your wife out on a date, when you fight with your in-laws. I mean, people are living life. The President of the United States is not an all-powerful being. Now, he can say dumb things and rile people's feathers up. He can propose certain things, but the Congress are the only people that pass laws. If the president makes some type of executive order and it's far off and too crazy, the Congress can check him and nullify that.
Mhm.
The president and who is president really has such a little effect on your day in and day out life, to be so hung up on the fact that, Trump is in office. See, that doesn't bother me. Do I like Trump? No, he's a pompous ass.
Mhm.
He's always been a pompous ass.
Yeah.
For years, people in the country loved him because he was a pompous ass. He had the #1 television show on TV for 8 or 9 years running
Right.
with The Apprentice. People loved his attitude. They're like, yeah, New York, Donald Trump. They went to, his brand is a high-end brand. People would go into the lobby of the Trump Towers just to say that they were at a Trump building. So they didn't hate the guy
Right.
for the way he is, until all of a sudden he ran for president, and now all these things are evil. So the American public, left, right, or center, are full of shit.
Yeah.
You can't have it both ways. Now you hate the guy. So the guy doesn't affect me on a daily basis.
Right.
He really doesn't. So I'm not going to lose any sleep over he wins 4 more years or somebody else gets in there.
Right.
And that's just the truth of the matter.
And I mean, there is like something to be said about Trump derangement syndrome, where
Oh
people,
yeah,
it's like this scapegoat complex where all of our anxieties and fears are just projected onto this
but
boogeyman.
you got to blame somebody, right? You can't blame yourself for things. You got to blame
Exactly.
somebody for how awful your life is.
Right.
Might
It's
as well
why,
be Trump because he's an asshole.
yeah. And he is probably an asshole.
Well, I'm sure he is,
But
100%.
but the whole thing about like misogyny, it's illogical in my opinion to pick on him as the sole problem for women in America.
Oh God, yeah.
Because he's such a, pig, frankly.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, but what? Bill Clinton wasn't.
right.
Bill
And
Clinton had like a list almost as long as Bill Cosby of people that he either groped, possibly raped, made unwanted advances to, sexual harassment. He's like one of the biggest, like, I wouldn't say sexual predators necessarily. Predator is a very strong word, but he's definitely a pompous, pushy, guy that basically wants to get his,
Yeah.
his willy wet, yet at all costs.
yeah.
So I mean,
Not to mention though, but the celebrity culture now in general, like what people watch, what people listen to, it's so vulgar and so tasteless.
Yeah.
Not that I'm putting it down, but
Yeah.
those are correct adjectives.
oh yeah,
I don't want to mention anything in particular because I mean, I like a lot of it too, but I sort of block it out and don't take it to heart.
yeah.
And most people do, but why can they do that for that?
Well,
not
that's
for
and
Trump?
that's see again. I ought to get a T-shirt made that says Americans are full of shit because on one hand, people get bent out of shape because Donald Trump has cheated on his wife, or Donald Trump said, in a private, candid conversation off the record that he thought, we grab him by the pussy and we do this and that. But yet, in the same breath, they'll let their kids, who are probably, under 16 years old, which is, not the age appropriate stuff that they allow them to do, will listen to somebody like Cardi B and all the foul, not only the foul language in the music, but the foul imagery in the videos and the foul, meaning behind the songs. They're okay with their kids listening to that kind of stuff and almost like pre-programming themselves to, guys getting the shit in the club and this. So the guys are like growing up thinking, well, this is it for me to be a man. I
Yeah.
got to be in the club getting my dick sucked by 4 bitches and this and that. And if I'm a girl, I'm supposed to give up that pussy and do it. That's what these songs say.
Yeah.
So you guys are okay with your kids, and I know you do it because I work with a lot of younger people and I interact with their parents, and they're oblivious to the music that the kids are listening to right in front of them on their phone. So it happens everywhere, but you're going to be pissed because Trump said this, but yet it's okay for your kids to hear all this. It's the same shit, people. It's the exact same thing. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah. And just to be clear, I don't put any of those artists down for how they earn a living. I am with you on the children factor, but they do have parental advisory warnings on.
Yeah,
well,
but those are
on what?
those are ineffective. What, one parent out of 20 actually, says, "Hey, no, you can't have that record."
My parents did when I was a kid.
My dad did too. My
Yeah.
dad was very strict. There was no R-rated movies on TV. There was no seeing boobs in the movies. They were very, very strict about that stuff. But now, I mean, there's none of that. It's like literally 1 out of 20 parents actually puts their foot down and doesn't let their kid, partake in that kind of stuff.
Right.
You know?
Well, but I think like I was always allowed to watch whatever movie because I'm an only child. Quentin Tarantino talked about how when you're an only child, your parents don't want to watch Disney
right.
movies with you.
Yeah.
They want to watch what they want to watch, and you just got to deal with it. So from a very young age, I always watched grown-up movies, and I never was into any
Mhm.
cartoons or anything childish.
Yeah.
Which made me kind of bit of an outsider at school because I was on a whole other level than the
Yeah.
other kids. Let's
Yeah.
put it that way.
Mhm.
But where was I going with this? But the thing with music, if it's a movie or a TV show, when the director yells cut and most of those people, they change into who they really are because they're just acting.
Sure.
Whereas I find in the music industry, a lot of people, they live the same lifestyle that they preach. I would say 50 Cent or Fiddy.
Yeah,
is it called
50.
that? Yeah,
50
sorry.
cent. 50 cent.
Well, he's actually not like that. He's all business.
Yeah.
Very sober, very respectable.
Mm-hmm.
And him, it wouldn't bother me. But people who sing or rap about violence and engage in violence, that's a whole other issue, because the music is not just a fantasy. It's
Yeah.
propaganda encouraging people, impressionable people, to
Oh yeah. Yeah, it dumbs down the
appeal to a certain way of being.
yeah, it
Not
dumbs
that-
down the culture.
It
And
does.
and it puts them on a mindset that, okay, this is cool now. It's not cool to be educated. It's not cool
Right.
to speak articulate. It's not cool to dress nice. It's not cool to have hobbies and do things like that. What's cool is you got to get you a 40 of this, or you got to get some, vodka or this up in the club, and you got to have some, I don't even want to say girls, because in none of these songs do they call the women that they sing about girls. They're all bitches, hoes, my little shawty, my little this, my little that. And it's all about getting yours and fucking and getting this money and getting this car and getting this house and getting this yacht.
And then there's also an element to it of people who listen to that not having all of those things, and
Yeah.
on some level feeling bad. So there might be a sense
Yeah,
of
yeah.
masochism to
Of
to
course.
that. It's
Of course,
They-
because now you're looking up to this and you're seeing these guys, on this yacht with 20 hot chicks dancing around naked on them. And you're thinking, holy shit, man, I'm like 20 years old, man. In the last 3 years, I've been working at this dumbass job. And how come I don't have that stuff? How come? So, yeah, I mean, it's got to wear on a kid's psyche if he's not brought
Yeah.
up right and he doesn't have good values or good self-esteem established.
which, even when kids have all those things in place, they
Oh, sure, it's
are
still hard.
impressionable.
Yeah, I mean, look at girls and the whole Kim Kardashian, thing. Before the Kardashians came around, I don't remember, 19-year-old girls getting Botox in their forehead or lip injections or ass implants or things like that they're doing now. And why are they doing it? Because there's this standard that's been set by entertainment and music
Right.
that's dictating that if I don't look like that and I don't do these things, then I'm not going to be wanted. I'm not going to be pretty like them. The guys won't want me. I won't be the girl banging in the club with them. And it's just such a ruckus. But yet, parents and people will swallow this and accept this. Oh, this is just the way music's changed, or entertainment's changed, or movies are just more violent now, or sexual in nature. But God forbid a businessman or a politician or somebody like that says something vulgar or a little off color, or maybe makes a joke about somebody else's nationality or whatever. That's what's important. Not your kids, not the way your kids are going to turn out,
Right.
but the fact some stranger that you're never probably ever going to meet in your life. Because there's 350 million people in America. How many of y'all are actually going to meet Donald Trump? How many of y'all going to actually have a conversation with him and see whether or not he really is an asshole or not? And the reason I bring that up is because I did have the opportunity, like I alluded to earlier, to meet Omarosa.
Right.
Now, I only knew Omarosa from watching, TV and watching Trump's program, and she was a horrible bitch on TV. She was
Right.
cutthroat, she was nasty, she was mean. So when I meet this lady in a very informal setting where she was at a friend of mine's place, we were having dinner and all that, she came in with a few of her girlfriends, sat down. I luckily, or unluckily, or chance of fate, got seated right next to her.
Right.
I'm expecting this lady to be like I seen on TV, just a bitch, uppity, full of herself, all well
Who are you to sit
manicured.
next to me?
Yeah, who are you? This and that. And I tell my friends this all the time, and they're like, "Oh, bullshit." I'm like, "No," and I have witnesses that saw it.
Mm-hmm.
She was funny. She was nice. She was well spoken. I asked her questions about politics, about the show. I didn't know prior that she had worked in 2 different White House administrations. I didn't know the college she went to. This is a sharp lady, man. She
Right.
is sharp.
Yeah.
And
From considering where she started.
yeah, exactly. She's sharp. And I had fun. We had fun. She joked. We were eating barbecue. Our fingers were all messy. Our mouths were messy. We're laughing. She was not pretentious or uptight or anything. When we left, I walked the girls out to the car that they had come in to make sure they got out safe. They're all hugging me. She said, "Oh, it was great meeting you. You're awesome," this and that. She was a doll.
Yeah.
I cannot say anything bad about her, no matter what
Right.
I see in the newspaper. And that's the thing. Until you actually know or see or talk to someone for yourself, everything you see on TV or on social media, it's hearsay. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's just like you don't know what's going on in Syria. Have you been there? No, you're
Mhm.
trusting the people at CNBC or Fox to tell you what's going on.
Mhm.
How many people have you actually been to Uganda to know what's going on there? So how can you possibly have an opinion about it? How can you personally know if someone's an asshole or not until you actually sit down and like break bread with them or have a drink with them or actually spend some time with them? And maybe when you're done, you're going to come along and you're going to be like, yeah, they really are. And maybe you're not. So people are full of crap, man.
Well, let's let this be the last thought for the day.
Ah,
I find that it definitely is inaccessible for most people to meet any of the people that they see on TV.
mm-hmm.
I've met quite a few people that I've seen in movies and TV throughout the course of my life, randomly at airports. I met Gabriel Burns at an airport,
Mm-hmm.
David Bradley,
Mm-hmm.
and you have as well.
Yeah.
But that's a rare occurrence.
Yeah.
I'd say, as our closing note, that people should stop caring about what people are like as people, and particularly in the realm of politics, only worry about their policy. This whole thing about caring about people's personal lives,
Yeah.
which I would even extend to Bill Clinton with the Monica Lewinsky scandal.
Yeah.
It's none of anyone's business. That's between him and his wife.
I agree.
If you look in Europe at Nicolas Sarkozy, who had a much younger, much prettier wife, I'm sure most people
Yeah.
didn't want to do the visuals on their sex life from her perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, nobody cares. It's not a big thing in France to give a shit about or to speculate on celebrities' personalities.
Yeah.
You hear that all the time. Oh, I heard Denzel Washington's a great guy. And other people will say, oh, I went up to him and asked him for an autograph and he, told me to fuck off.
Mm-hmm.
And that means he's an asshole. But maybe he was in a bad mood that day. And at the end of the day, who cares?
Right.
Why do we care what those people are like? Why does that have to matter? He's a good actor.
I don't know.
He's an entertainer. He entertains us.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, who cares? Same with Trump. All the discussion is on his character, his personality, and we never really talk about his policy.
Yeah.
Why, for example, his will to end NAFTA so that Americans are prioritized and companies don't outsource as much as they have been.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually a pretty socialistic left-wing thing that neither Barack Obama did or Bernie Sanders proposed.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody talks about that.
Yeah.
How it's actually a socialist thing where a government is getting involved in sort of corporate policy, or a government leader is getting involved in corporate policy.
Yeah.
That seems like a very socialistic thing to do.
Sure. Yeah, no, for sure.
So, but you'll never hear people talk about that.
No, you won't. I mean, and it is, I think, more of an American phenomenon. I mean, shit, the was it president or prime minister of Italy had a porn star wife, and nobody cared over there. I mean,
Right.
people joked about it, but they don't care about that. And why they give a shit about it here? I mean, it's no one's business. And you know what? America's got a problem. It's got a nosy problem. Stop being
Right.
nosy. It's none of your damn business what people do in the privacy of their own home. If it doesn't affect you, whether they're, your next door neighbor, the person up the block that you've never met, or some celebrity that you see on TV that you think you know because you see him on a show every week that you don't know. It's none of your damn business. So focus on more important things instead of worrying about whether Trump's an idiot and his personality is just horrible, so he shouldn't be president, he should be impeached, or this celebrity is this or that. Why don't you get to know like the teachers that educate your kids? Why don't you go see if your son's 4th grade math teacher is an asshole or not?
And stop getting your political opinions from celebrities.
Yeah. Stop getting your political opinions from celebrities because I've met a lot of celebrities, and some are really nice people, some are extremely smart, and some are extremely ignorant and idiots. But they can imitate and act. Okay, so, woohoo.
All right, John. It's been good talking with you today.
Yeah, it's been great, man. It's been great. The hour flew by. It really flew by.
Yeah, it
I
sure
mean,
did.
it was good. So
Yeah.
much more to come, and
More to come next week, guys. Thanks for watching us here at the Joust.
yeah,
We'll keep you informed on political and current events as they come out
definitely.
over the
Definitely.
next few days, and also entertainment. Looking forward to Game of Thrones on Sunday.
You Game of Throners. One day I might finally understand what this is all about. I saw one episode, and it was like a naked, fun, freaky free for all.
Well, it's definitely a lot more sexual than Lord of the Rings.
Well, I don't know about that either. I know about wedding rings or lack thereof.
Okay.
All right.
All right, John.
Okay, Zach. Have a good one, buddy, and
Yeah.
we'll talk to everybody next week.
Yep.